Dark Sanchez here, with another episode of Only the Ladder is Real, chronicling my attempts to rise up the AOE 2 multiplayer ranked ladder, although more recently I've been slipping in Elo, but that's absolutely fine. I'm here to have fun. Now, for today's match, we have Doc Sanchez, myself, in the blue, and I'm up against Yannick, who is in the red. I'm playing as the Malians, which is my favourite civ, and Yannick is playing as the Teutons. And now we're playing on Arabia. Not a map that I play too often, although it is probably the most popular map in the map pool. And this is the King of the Desert version of Arabia. So what you have are goats and elephants instead of sheep and boars. And now I'm just going to switch on my scouting. So with the King of the Desert version of Arabia, particularly in the King of the Desert 4 tournament, there was quite a lot of laming, so people stealing each other's goats and elephants. I'm not so used to this map, I don't play it so often, I tend to play more closed and hybrid maps, so I'm having a little bit of difficulty here finding my sheep. If we take the scouting off, we can see there's one set here, and there's another set here just beyond this wood line. Now, just to set the scene, this was my final game of the day after playing quite a few games in a row. I was getting a bit tired, and like I say, I'm not used to this map. I couldn't find my sheep. My mind instantly leaps to the worst. I'm thinking, my opponent's lamed me. I'm going to have to do something about this. So normally my gameplay, I tend to be a bit more passive in the earlier ages and then try and build up to a larger army in the later stages, which does not fit in with the sort of high level meta, where you have a lot of early aggression. But in this occasion, for this matchup, I couldn't find my goats. I'm thinking they've been stolen, and so I'm going to adapt to that style of play, and I'm going to try and go for a much more aggressive start. That will come in shortly. Just to look at my opponent for a moment, Yannick is cutting the straggler trees. It's on elephants. Got some houses going up. They currently have less idle TC time than myself, and less idle eco time, so their Dark Age is probably, even with the straggler trees, probably going a little bit smoother than mine. I'm starting to get my base set up though. I've brought in the elephant, I'm going to berries. I still haven't found my goats, and that's not something that's going to change anytime soon. So going to the berries, trying to get some food in to support my uptime to feudal. Looking over here now, we have a lumber camp coming in. Actually, Yannick hasn't found these goats over here. Or these goats. So actually, my opponent's in pretty much the same situation as myself. They're bringing their elephants early. They've gone to the wood line to get some wood, so they should be able to mill their berries very shortly. With Malians, of course, it's slightly easier. Your buildings are cheaper. But something that I was thinking about is that there's an eco bonus for the Teutons. They get very cheap farms. So I'm thinking that I need to click up quickly and do damage, because once you've given them long enough to start establishing a farming eco, that can really snowball quite hard. And the Teutons in the later stages of the game, in the Imperial Age, have some of the best units available in the game. They're a really strong late game civ, and you tend to see them more frequently in some closed maps. But they also can be used very effectively here. Here we go. So I've taken my elephant. Second elephant's coming in. Villagers taking quite a bit of damage there. I think I stopped paying attention. So some people like to garrison their TCs to weaken the elephant. I've just done it there just to save the vill. Something that I like to do, which I did not do very effectively here at all, is usually I send vills to another resource, or they'll be finishing off the goats, and then I command queue them to join in to aid the luring villager once the lure is complete. So that often lines up nicely with the end of a sheep, or dropping off wood from the straggler trees. So what I'll do is I'll put 6 on stragglers. When the elephant gets to about here on the screen, I'll then click them to the TC and then command shift to the elephant. They'll drop off a little bit of wood, and then they will shoot the elephant. This is not a good lure at all. The elephant's behind the TC. I took some damage there, but I have successfully brought it down, and I'll be able to get some food from that. My opponent, on the other hand, is looking to start walling. They're building a barracks. Maybe they're thinking about having some defensive units or starting a drush. Now, you see, something that's gone wrong over here. Yannick also did not find his goats and has now gone very heavily onto the berries, which is not necessarily the best choice. You start to get inefficiency as vills bump into each other, and the berries themselves are the slowest food source. So I've only put 4 on berries, even though I couldn't get my goats. I don't normally use feudal age farms. Dark age farms. I've put 1 there just to help me get over the line and click up to feudal. What I tend to do is I get my horse collar first and then try and build farms. It's rare that I use a dark age farm. It's only when I need that just little extra boost to get up to feudal. But now I'm thinking Malians. I've got lots of different options. I want to go aggressive. My food intake has been difficult because of the goats, so my game plan is dump as many villagers onto wood and then later onto gold as possible. Keep some food eco in order to research upgrades, but I'm going to be going for an archer build. And actually I've got one vill on his own down here, just on that wood. So my opponent clicks up to feudal slightly quicker than me. They do have 1 extra vill compared to me. That's because they skipped loom earlier on, so that gave them a bit more time, and they do have a bit less idle TC time than me. This is another problem now. So some goats have been found. When you have this many vills on berries, the berries do start to disappear quite quickly, so you need to have a backup plan for what happens next. They've gone straight on to the wood upgrade. I've gone for wood and farms because I'm thinking I'm going to create some farms to support my push, but I'm not going to go heavily onto it. I'm not looking to make a cavalry switch. I'm looking to stick with ranged units. So with that, I'm building my range, and I'm getting a blacksmith ready so that I can upgrade the archers. I have made a spearman. I'll make a few more. Archery range pushes, it's really good. Commonly, if your opponent is going scouts, having a couple of spearmen available is really helpful. Or sometimes the opponent uses scouts just to try and clear your army defensively, or even if they use other forms of infantry, which spearmen don't necessarily counter, they can provide a bit of a shield or a distraction. I've done a bit of scouting here, so from the opponent, I know there's this gold. I know the wood lines here. Scout goes down, but it served its purpose. I know the berries are almost gone, and I know that we are open to the sides. So we've had some walling here to prevent a push. It defended the berries, but unfortunately the gold and wood line here, where most of the villagers are, is still quite exposed. This side is now getting walled off as the farms come in. I believe Yannick over here is auto-scouting, so that's something to note. So the scouting for my opponent in this particular match didn't get to saw a bit of my eco, doesn't see the lumber camp here, sees one here, does not see the forward one or the military buildings. So at this point they don't know what I'm going for. Now the scout comes in. And so what happens next is a bit of a surprise. So we've got the 2 spearmen coming forwards, only 1 archer to begin with, but there are some more going to come out the range. I believe this is auto scout by the way that the scout is moving, so not very efficient scouting there. This walling is being undertaken. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this style of walling. It might have been easier, it would have been quite large, but you could wall from the edge of the map to the wood line, from this wood line to the other one. This sort of circular pattern, there's still quite a lot of gaps at the front and at the back. If you have good armor upgrades, you consider diving the TC. I've accidentally shown my spearman there. And I've shown the archer. And I've got more streaming through the map. I've also mixed in the occasional skirm as well, just in case my opponent goes archers. However, only a stable and a barracks from my opponent. They're all coming back towards the TC. I don't think that was a town bell, but a lot of vills have gone idle now. I lose a spearman there. And now, as the game develops, it's quite interesting to consider what's going on. So back home, I've set up a bit of food eco. I've got a couple of farms. And you'll see now I'm idling my TC. So this is deliberate. I'm not very good at macroing and microing at the same time. And you'll see from my units that eventually get eaten by the TC, I'm not really good at either of those things, even when I'm only doing one at the time. But essentially, I'm idling my TC. I'm not using my food to create vills. I'm keeping that food in reserve in order to be able to afford any upgrades. Because at the moment I have fletching, I have the archer upgrade, but if my opponent tries to make a counter, it leaves me with resources to make an upgrade spearman or switch into scouts. Now, this is a gamble. Pretty much any how to get good at A&E guide will say keep your town centres running all the time. Always be producing villagers, no matter what. And to be fair, 9 times out of 10, that's the best advice. But sometimes people stick to this potentially slightly more religiously than they should. At this level, at the lower ELO level, being able to apply pressure really does distract the enemy from being able to effectively progress through the game. So you can see that town centre was only just ungarrisoned. So although their idle TC time is less than mine, actually they weren't particularly producing vills. Their idle TC time has been climbing, and their eco is not efficient at all. They're running villagers around trying to build buildings. They're going to straggler trees. They're rushing down my army. So although I'm not creating any more vills, and the vill lead is extending in favour of Yannick, it's actually not really doing me particularly much harm. Because although I'm behind in eco, I'm steadily producing military. Yannick here, if he built a market, could quite easily just balance that eco and go up to Castle Age. However, waiting for the food to come in. And food has been one of the slower areas due to the production of skirms, and also, well, now skirms, but also because I've been idling the farms quite a bit. At this point, I've not actually done too much damage in terms of villager kills. However, I have caused a little bit of disruption. And my eco, having just said that about the market, is getting quite unbalanced. I'm collecting lots of wood. There's a lot of vills on wood. But as you can see here, just switching that back over to food and gold and buying my forging upgrade. And as you can see, the gold count is coming up. And even with this slow food approach, eventually I should be able to buy my way up to Castle Age. What I've been doing with this food as well is I've made a couple of scouts, so you can see it's really hard for the enemy to deal with. I've got scouts, I've got spears, so their own scouts won't be much good, and I've got archers running around. I'm mainly trying to focus on archer production, but I do actually have quite a few skirms as well, as I saw their range going up. That's something I can use to engage their skirms, and just provide a distraction from my archers. And at this point, I'm now starting to get some value. I'm starting to get some villager kills. I appreciate at a higher level, I probably would have been destroyed by now. However, at this particular ELO ranking, sometimes defending takes up all of your all your focus, all your concentration, and it can be harder to counterattack, which would actually be the play here. So we have had a scout sort of moving around the map, but you can see I am completely open. I've created sort of a line of sight here at the front of my base, but we're open at the sides, open at the back, open over here. Run in with a few scouts to this wood line, to this gold, and it would be GG. My eco is so fragile that I wouldn't be able to recover easily, but I've used the market. I've brought myself up to Castle Age. I saw they were up, and I'm thinking that there might be some knights coming out soon. Skirms pop out of the range. However, my scout is here ready to work, and archers with fletching and 1 armor upgrade still trade pretty well against skirmishers who have no blacksmith upgrades. And this will be a theme that continues. As the game goes on, you'll see the impact of having those blacksmith upgrades. But I've split up my army into chunks. I'm still brought them off of this wood line. They've only just cleared this wood line, but they haven't returned to it. So currently they're not on wood. It's quite good there. They use the hill advantage. They'll clean up this army with those knights. However, if they want to maintain the map control, they do need to continue to produce knights. So at this point, I know that I'm going for Castle Age. So I've got quite a lot of archers in queue. Still sending another one forward. Got some forward goats here assisting with the attack. But at this point, I believe the archers, yes, will start holding back, positioning on the hill. I know that if I keep trickling them in, the knights will keep cleaning them up. And with Castle Age, I can convert these to crossbows, get the upgrade, get Bodkin Arrow, and then come back again once I have a more robust army. So that's going to be my focus for the moment. Now, at this point, they've bought themselves some time by clearing up my army. I'm not sure where the knights have gone. Oh, they're here. Some lost HP on the knights. That one's full health. Again, this could be a good opportunity, even with just a few units. If they were to run over here or into the back of my eco, there wouldn't be very much that I could do about it. My idle TC time is still higher. It's been creeping up, but so's the opponents actually. They haven't been producing vills as much as they could have done. So with that damage, the vill count is now much more even. I have occasionally produced some. I've actually got one. I don't know why they're garrisoned there. They're moving towards a second TC now. They're thinking they've cleared the threat. Time to stabilise. Back on the wood. Back on these wood lines. Going to stone. Maybe thinking about some defensive towers or a castle. But unfortunately, something that hasn't been addressed appropriately is this base is still very open. So this town centre will secure a wood line over here. This town centre does assist with keeping the farm safe. But over here, this mining camp, these sections, it's quite a long way to retreat to the nearest TC. And these are only palisade walls. Back home, the army is growing. Again, at the higher level, you might see players moving out sooner than this once they've got a few crossbows. But my thoughts at this time were there's potentially quite a lot of knights on the field. I need to be able to one-shot them, so I need to be able to get to a bigger mass, looking more towards sort of 20 crossbows. What I don't realise, though, is that my opponent is sticking mainly with the skirm play, which I don't necessarily agree with. Knights are a good counter to range units if you have enough of them. You need quite a few crossbows to be able to one-shot a knight, and if you get the knights and their full armour upgrades, then they can dive in, and you can use the mobility to pick the fights. Like I say, you can counter-attack. With skirms, obviously they trade quite well against crossbows if they have all the full upgrades, but they're not really a raiding unit. They're quite slow to do damage to any other types of unit. Skirms and spears, to a lesser extent, like Cavan scouts, they're not as good as the gold units. If you have knights available, or crossbows, or even infantry, even the militia line, they're going to be your real damage dealers. So at this point, I'm feeling more aggressive now. I'm feeling more confident with this number of crossbows. I've got some spears to back them up. There's a little bit of upgrades for the spears, so although they're still 1-for-1, no match for a knight, if they have the numbers, which technically I have, along with the backing of the crossbows, they'll trade quite well against the knights. But I'm thinking, this is quite good for killing villagers, this is quite good for engaging the units, but I thought I'd add some siege just to back this up. And at this level, again, siege can be quite menacing. It's one thing to try and send out your armies to trade against mine, but if I'm interfering with the eco and trying to ram down buildings or use mangonels to destroy buildings, suddenly you're then trying to send units in different directions. And although I don't know this at the time, because I can't see what kind of army my opponent is using, units like skirms are not very good against mangonels. So I build the siege workshop, still idling here. This actually works out massively in my favour, although I don't realise it, because although I can't see it, my opponent is dropping a defensive castle. Not entirely thinking that this is a very good castle position. Actually, where my crossbows are standing would defend this wood line, would defend this gold. It's on a hill. It would be a bit more daring, a bit more aggressive, more susceptible in the Imperial Age to getting trebbed down. But this position here, I feel like it's not really defending an important area. It won't necessarily allow you to... It could potentially defend this gold, but not effectively. And actually, unfortunately for them, I've spotted their vills. that actually happened when that skirmisher engaged. It drew my crossbows forward, so now I've actually managed to deny that castle. There weren't enough vills there. There wasn't enough army support. We have all this army guarding this area here. We have all these skirms, but unfortunately, tower drop was unsuccessful. I know that it's distracting the crossbows for a moment, but I did click the castle. I wanted to make sure that I was doing damage to it in case I could deny the enemy the stone. And again, spearmen are holding up the skirmishers while the crossbows do work. I actually made sure to get thumb ring, also as well ballistics. So I actually waited till as many upgrades as possible could come in before I could engage. So these are actually fully upgraded Castle Age crossbows. My opponent only has Feudal Age armor upgrades on their skirms, so when fighting against a hill bonus, skirms are not doing very well. So I'm pressuring this area, looking to make a hole, although I then realise I could check to see if it's still open, because I remembered it was before. Meanwhile, I'm thinking if I pressure this area with a mangonel, although it might get rushed down by cavalry units, it can be a distraction. I'm hitting one area while hitting this area. I actually take out the Houseville there. I wasn't aware of this TC, I hadn't scouted it. Of course, my scouting pretty much ended after the first attack, but I remembered that we had stone back here, that we had gold, that we had a wood line. So I've sent my crossbows back there. TC's idle again. If you look at the eco time, although I still have a really high idle TC time, so does my opponent, and my eco has been much more efficient throughout this. I haven't got wheelbarrow, but I have had my Feudal Age eco upgrades, which is helping. My opponent does too, so we're the same for upgrades there. But because my villagers haven't been disturbed, they've been able to operate effectively. I've now got a ram, so knocking down these buildings. There's so many houses, they're never going to get housed from that, but I'm thinking that the alarm sound's going to go off. Raiding over here, taking out villagers at the wood line. At this point, I now have the Vill lead. Oh no, I don't have the Vill lead. Apologies. I still don't have the Vill lead, but I have actually killed 21 Vills in this game. So quick maths, 21 Vills, that's over 1,000 food. That has been denied from the enemy that I've instead been able to invest into upgrades and eco. And actually, if you look at the resource count now, I'm quite comfortable that my units aren't particularly getting countered. So I'm thinking, let's lock in this game, let's get some more upgrades, let's take this through to the Imperial Age, because then I can click up to Arbalest and potentially think about upgrading my siege if needs be. So they finally reacted. This could have happened quite a bit earlier. They could have rushed down these rams with the infantry or rushed down the Mangalau. Over here, there's no vills to be seen, so I'm just making a nuisance, destroying buildings. I know that Imp is on the way, so I'm trying to preserve my numbers. I come back to support my siege. It's been quite lucky to have been able to do so much without being disturbed for so long, but I come here just to rescue it. And yeah, I'm feeling quite confident at this point. Now, here come the skirmishes. My opponent does have a lot of gold, so I can't help thinking that knights would have been, you know, rather than 15 skirms, get yourself, 6 or 7 knights would have done real work here, either in my eco or attacking the crossbows. Again, I'm thinking, let's get out of here. I'm approaching Imperial Age. I know that the skirmishers, by the damage they're doing, aren't fully upgraded, but they are still doing some damage. I didn't know these vills are here, but I'm going to be retreating sort of towards them. I'm thinking I want to preserve my mass. I've got a minute to go. If I can bring them home, I can get some more upgrades, and then I can clean this up if I make some reinforcements. The rams here are still doing work, getting rid of production buildings. I've got a spear to take down this knight. The rams are going to stay alive. They're going to keep doing damage. And here I've realised I'm not going to make it back to the base. Let's grab a hill and take the fight. And actually, even without any micro, the crossbows are trading evenly with the skirmishers, and they're going to survive this incident. And this is the thing, if these skirmishers were fully upgraded, then even fighting up the hill, they should have cleaned those crossbows. I'm up to Imperial Age, thinking to come back to the gold, and the GG is called. So, what my opponent unfortunately didn't realise, and I'm going to go on to their scouting, was actually they had scouted some of my base, but it hadn't been in quite a long time. As you can see, there's no red on this side of the map. This was all completely still open. We had villages exposed on multiple different areas on these golds, on this gold over here. Villages on the wood line. Just a few scouts, just a few knights could have wreaked havoc. And the only reason that I managed to collect so many resources is just because my eco hasn't been disturbed. And as you can see from the timeline here, there were times where there was a reasonable amount of army against mine, but at this point it didn't move forwards, and we can see that the production trailed off slightly. Economy-wise, so actually, surprisingly, well, I focused very heavily on them. I collected more wood, more gold. I collected 0 stone, and that was a decision I made. I figured if I'm already going to be idling my TC, I'm not going to bother building additional TCs. I'm not going to try and push forward with a castle drop. It exposes too many villages. And once you get into towers, then I'm probably in a bit of a dire situation. So I figured ignore the stone, focus entirely on wood and gold, keep funding those archers, and just use food just to occasionally make spearmen, occasionally make scouts, occasionally get my upgrades. And that was how the game developed. Research count, a little bit more than my opponent. And of course I hit Imperial Age. Sometimes going for the Imperial Age or going up to the next stage, even if I was actually quite surprised with the outcome of this match. I was thinking that what was going to happen was I was going to go to Imp and then things were going to start reversing on me, because I figured that I'd had such low eco for such a long time. And actually my opponent, if you look, had spread out eco across the map. There's a TC over here. Villagers going down to wood over here. There was a potential to get back into this, especially the cavalry numbers were coming back in over here. My ram was gone. But I think having lost all these buildings, getting close to being housed, having lost the skirm mass, I don't think they realised that I actually had no more army at this point to back it up. So I was actually at a slight disadvantage. But once you see that Imperial Age, in the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, there's bound to be a castle or trebuchets coming in. It was just unfortunate for my opponent that they didn't know that that was not the case. I was running with no eco. But sometimes it does show that sometimes at this elo you want to be applying pressure, and then that can be really useful. Even though Yannick had the stronger economy, because it was disturbed so much, it wasn't able to be translated completely into a game-winning position. And so that was the end of this match. Thank you all very much. I look forward to speaking to you next time. Take care.